Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us across the world, and for those who are joining us online. We are very warm welcome to our event titled Ensuring Transition Mining. Does not replicate abuses of the past. And we are going to hear the voices from the community. My name is Saida Salam, I'm Africa Transition Advisor at the PWYP and former Africa Co-Director. And today I'll be your moderator. This event is organized by.
Would you please put it closer to the mic?
Hi. Right, so this event is co-organized by Earthworks, BHRRC, Publish What You Pay, LMN, War on Want, Oxfam, and NRGI. NRGI is an international research and advocacy NGO working to support fair, prosperous, and sustainable societies in countries rich in oil, gas, and minerals across the global south. We are looking hard at the governance of critical minerals. We just published a report titled Triple Win and how can benefit citizens in Africa. The world needs to stop burning fossil fuels. Climate change is already happening, and to prevent the worst impact, we must accelerate the just transition to cleaner and safer energy. The transition to 100% renewable energy will require minerals for the technologies including solar, wind turbines, and storage. Without adequate social and environmental safeguards, this transition could result in a new wave of green extractivism that abuses human rights and destroys the environment. The profit-driven extractive models have entrenched and exacerbated inequality and contributed to driving conflicts, environmental damage, attack on our communities and defenders, while simultaneously playing a significant role in emissions. An energy transition based on this model will fail, as we have seen in the past. Human rights abuses disrupt the mining activities and therefore will impede the supply of metals needed for transition. Governments, companies, and the global community must position human rights at the core of their climate plans for it to be successful and sustainable. Transition to renewable energy sources must be just and equitable and accompanied by simultaneous transformation away from irresponsible mining by centering the human rights of indigenous frontline communities and workers across the value chain. Mining projects must prioritize rights to free, prior, and informed consent, including the right to withhold consent as aligned with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I would like to draw your attention and encourage you to interact with organizers' COP-related statements issued separately but complementary by Earthworks, BHRRC, and Publish What You Pay You can access these through their respective website. Now, with these issues, we have distinguished speakers here with us today who will share their experiences about the transition impact on human rights and environment. They will highlight the connections between the mining and the energy transition. They will explore the transition's impact on human rights and the environment. What needs to be done at the community level by industries, governments, and the society as a whole to consider the type of and the level of extraction that is actually needed for the energy transition. I really look forward to a fruitful deliberation in the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or less than 15 minutes. Now, with that, I have a pleasure to introduce our distinguished speakers, and I will start from my immediate right. My immediate right is Dr. Takandriana Rapidson. Apologies if I Dr. Takandriana is a Malagasy researcher in political science, activist, and human rights defender. She is serving as the executive director of the Transparency International Madagascar and also the national coordinator of the published 14 page. Dr. Takandriana, welcome.
Just call me King.
Dr. K. That's not easier. Next to Kay, I would like to introduce Edson Renner. I hope I pronounced it right. Oh, thank you. Edson is an indigenous activist, writer, and a PhD student at the Vienna University, Austria, where he developed studies in legal anthropology. You're welcome, Edson. And next to Edson is Nsama Chikwanka, national coordinator of public social pay Zambia. And next is Leslie Munoz Rivera. Go? Yeah, thank you very much. Leslie belongs to the Kola peoples from the community of Copiapo in Chile, where she has served as on the board for the past year. So Leslie, welcome. Now, I think those are our panelists today. And so the way we're gonna run in the next few minutes, we will have the first round of questions. And after that, I would like it to be more interactive. So we'll pick few contributions from the floor, and then we'll come back again for the second round if we have time before we kind of wind up. So my very first question would go to, and I understand Edson and Leslie are sharing the presentation, right? So you have 5 minutes each, and I would appreciate if you can stick to the time. So Edson, many of the resources for the energy transition, including minerals and high, it's not working.
It's not, that's right.
I don't need it. So it's my voice, I hope is loud.
All right, great.
Thank you. Thank you. So, sorry, my question to you, Edson. Many of the resources for the energy transition, including minerals and high solar and wind power potential, are located near indigenous people's land. I understand your community is currently defending its territory against the mining of gold, boron, silver, copper, and increasingly against lithium. What is the current state of indigenous people's rights in the energy transition? If you can share with us, shed a light on.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think I will start answering that, questioning the expression energy transition. We indigenous people are facing a transition that is not really a transition. We are seeing the same colonial powers, patterns of approaching indigenous people, especially related to their participation in the process of projects that impact their lands. In Brazil, we have, in the last 10 years, we have experienced many so-called disasters, accidents related to mining, to like what happened in Brumadinho, that affected directly my people. Our river, the sacred river Watu, was killed literally for a mining disaster. My relatives and friends, Munduruku people, close to Amazon, in the Amazon area, they are in the Fiocruz, is a health foundation, conduct a test on them. And the conclusion was that these Munduruku people, 9 in 10 people in the community, they are contaminated with mercury. Also a side effect of mining in their lands. And I could list several cases here, but what we see on one pattern, one common thing in these so-called accidents or problems that indigenous people are facing in Brazil. We see that the companies, they are not respecting our very basic rights to, for example, the free prior informed consent. And when they come to us to discuss consultation, they pick some members of the company, the community, and put a lot of money on the table. That's what they consider a free consent. When they have one member, not the community or the collective discussion, then we have to think about what is transition, what is consultations for those companies. We have to question this green economy that, for example, 2 years ago, an initiative called Responsible Miner Index released a report saying that in 49 countries, 180 mine companies, they are responsible for only 50 of these 108 companies. They have only 50 of these companies in 49 countries. They have kind of an initiative to talk to the indigenous people, to the impacted communities. They have some mechanisms to allow people to claim what is going on, to complain about what's going on in their communities. Then what we see that the states are failing to protect indigenous communities, their rights, and the other stakeholders, they are not considering the basic of indigenous people's rights, for example, the right to be informed, to be part of the conversation when they have a project or any endeavor that will impact them. And this is repeating, and with this new economy, green energy, the new so-called transition mineral, we see those cases being multiplied year by year. And I am also here with Cultural Survival and an initiative called Surge Coalition, that we are uniting forces to provide solutions along with indigenous people for those problems, because we believe that green economy, transition economy cannot exist without indigenous people. We need to be at the table, but we don't need to be at the table when we have to discuss only loss and damage. We want to be at the table before the projects are going on. We need to be at the table to plan, to say no when we see that we will impact our lands, we will impact our animals, we will impact our rivers, our forests. We need to be at the table to be part of all the entire process of any state or corporation in our lands. Then I think I conclude now my first participation.
Thank you very much. That was very important and very good closing remark. No transition without people. So thank you very much. Leslie, you want to intervene and share with us studies from Chile?
Sí, buenas tardes, parte de la primera foto, la comuna de PWYP, el Observatorio Nacional de Salario Mínimo. Y también por la delegación de Chile.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Munoz. I'm from the PWYP community in Chile. It's also part of COP27, the Observatorio Plurinacional de Salarios Andinos. So we're looking at Andean salt flats, and it's also part of the Corporate Survivor Delegation.
Yo les voy a hablar de qué es la industria del litio y cómo se extrae el material en Argentina, Bolivia y Chile.
I will be speaking about the lithium industry and about the extraction of lithium in Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia.
Lo que se hace es extraer grandes cantidades de agua, dejarlas secando y de esa forma tener las sales de litio.
So there is a lot of water extraction, and then let the sun evaporate the water to obtain the lithium.
Actualmente en el territorio donde yo resido, en el Salar de Maricunga, se han aprobado 2 proyectos de extracción de litios, los cuales no contemplaron la consulta previa, libre e informada a mi comunidad.
So currently where I'm from, there are 2 projects that have been suspended because no pre-prior and informed consent was done in my community.
Y esto es un ejemplo de lo que también pasa en otros territorios, como es el Salar de Atacama, donde se contempló la consulta libre, previa e informada.
This is also an example of what happened in the salt flat of Atacama, where there was no pre-prior and informed consent.
Y además se ha visto vulnerada la biodiversidad del flamenco dentro de este territorio.
And also the flamingos population has been threatened in this territory.
Y se está llevando, el pueblo indígena Licanantay se está yendo de su territorio porque ya no tienen agua.
And the Licanantay peoples in this territory are being forced out because they no longer have water.
Además tenemos el ejemplo de la Argentina, en Catamarca, en donde tienen problemas porque la empresa no contempló la consulta indígena y además secó una vega.
So, and there's also the example in Argentina, in Catamarca, where a lithium company dried up the water, so they are also being forced out.
Y también el caso en Bolivia, en donde se están vulnerando los derechos de las comunidades indígenas en el Salar de Uyuni y Colpaz.
There's also the example of Bolivia, where indigenous rights are being violated because of the protection of the salt flat of Uyuni.
A lo que quiero llegar con estos ejemplos, y siguiendo la línea de Edson, es que los gobiernos no están, con esta transición energética, no están respetando los derechos de los pueblos indígenas.
So what I want to say is that governments are not respecting the rights of indigenous peoples to this so-called green energy transition.
Y además que tienen mayores exigencias para las empresas que extraen litio desde los salarios.
And they don't have any standards for companies trying to extract lithium from the salt plants.
Y como último mensaje quiero decir que debemos dejar de llamar al litio como un mineral estratégico, puesto que estratégicos son los pueblos indígenas, la biodiversidad, el agua y la vida.
And we have to stop calling this mineral strategic, because what is really strategic is indigenous peoples, biodiversity, water, and life.
Y para que exista una real transición justa, se deben contemplar a los pueblos indígenas y no se debe sacrificar a ellos.
If there is to be a real energy transition, then we have to consider indigenous peoples and put them at the center.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wesley. And indeed, that was a great conclusion. Strategic asset on the earth is actually the people and their lives. So that is very interesting to hear. And I hear repeatedly like there are initiatives that are trying to address these issues. But the state is not protecting the people. This is what I keep hearing from the first presentation and the second presentation. Now, let me turn to Nsama. And as you hear, the mining sector is notorious for high-level corruption, environmental pollution, and human rights abuses, including, violence against women, indigenous people, and environmental defenders. Now, my question really is, what do adequate social environmental safeguards look like for the mining sector, and what current practices need to change to achieve that? Because we are hearing a lot of concerns. So there must be a change. So what would be the right safeguards to protect the rights of the people? Meanwhile, also extracting these resources for energy transition. Some.
Yeah, thanks. Well, any development that does not put people and people's interests at the center is not correct. And this is what we have been experiencing in almost all jurisdictions that have been extracting natural resources. It is evident that these natural resources are not working. They don't seem to be working. Yes, there are a few pockets. You can point at one or two buildings, a road, a school. Well, people can even talk about contribution to the GDPs of economies, but it still doesn't meet the aspirations of the people. Repeatedly, we hear this coming out. Even within the context of discussing the energy transition, we don't seem to be addressing the fundamentals. What is it that has been perpetuated with impunity that we don't seem to be paying attention to? In the current frame, the energy transition may not work for several reasons. one of the reasons is that it seems like the business as usual. That's what seems to be happening back home in Zambia. We've not taken stock of the damage extractivism has done. But maybe there are countries in the audience or those that have joined virtually where their governments said before we plan to increase production of these minerals, let's first stop and find out how past experiences, past practices have disadvantaged the people. So that even as we ramp up production, we should be able to identify things that we don't need to repeat. I don't think that has happened. And as for me, that's a fundamental gap that we are not addressing. And we may need to pay attention to that. People's lives have been disrupted. We've heard, and it's not just in countries that I've spoken here. It's everywhere. I'm talking about my country, Zambia. I can talk about Southern Africa because I've worked in the region in the past. It's the same problem. For some reason, there seems to be a conviction that the energy transition will have a positive impact on communities and economies. The current economic framework or the models that we're using need to be reformed. I'm not sure anybody is addressing reforming the economic model. The processes that are used to do the environmental impact assessment need to be reformed, need to be looked at. That's right. Because it's top down. Right. So what are we doing in getting excited? And I love when I listen to my president, my leaders, bragging that we are opening up investments so that we can have so many jobs. But where are the people in the middle of value chain? Where are the people? It seems like it's, these flowery statements, nice looking, but we need to get to the details. What is the cost benefit? Have we done cost benefit analysis as countries? So there's a lot to say about this, but clearly, this energy transition is not driven by economies that cost the living. It is not. And therein lies the biggest problem. It is externally driven. It's people who want the minerals who are saying, we've seen minerals in your country, we are coming, and we will do 1, 2, 3 for you. And our leaders are saying, please welcome. I can pause here.
Thank you very much, Zama. I picked 2 key takeaways of the submission. One is lack of stock taking of the past mistakes and the costs that apply to the people. And the second, I think you already suggested really reforming economic model. Now, from the top down, really reversing it to really bottom up. So I think that is already we're moving into, and if it is a bottom up, no way you can avoid consulting, and not manipulative consultation, but the real and genuine consultation with people. Thank you very much for that. Okay, now we're moving slowly into action. We have heard governments and corporations use the term just transition. Their pledges and policy proposals to address climate change. But so far, we have heard here the conversation is kind of moving into a different direction. We have seen more of kind of a capitalism bringing itself than transformational system change. Now, my question to you is, what do you want, governments and corporations to learn from, and of course replicate how your communities are currently visioning and building more just world in energy transition?
Okay. Thank you very much, Silat, and hi everyone. I can relate very much to what Edson and Leslie have been sharing because we are also living this in Madagascar, where in the southern part of the country there is the Rio Tinto and QMM mining, which destroys lives. And as civil society organization within the PWYP coalition, we have been documenting losses suffered by the communities out there, loss of livelihoods, increase in health problems, lack of access to natural resources, a lot of social problems. And the first feeling is that beyond the company itself, it is the government of Madagascar who failed in protecting these communities. So one of the first things to do is to appeal on our government to do what they have to do, what they are supposed to do in protecting human rights and ensuring the well-being of communities, putting communities first before profit and before the transition which not be profitable to us population. That's the first thing. We have to remind them. Secondly, we need also to turn to companies and say, stop colluding with the government because you need to make profit and you forget about the population, about the community. It's not the right thing to do. It can be a win-win game at some point, but if and only if, with the capitals, if we include the population into the game and you respect their right to say no at some point. Because if we ask the communities and if they say no, and if we go beyond this no, then it is a total violation of their human rights, their fundamental rights, and we cannot accept that no longer. There won't be a just transition in this shape. And that's why if you read PWYP's declaration for COP27, and then you will see that we as local communities must not pay the price for transition minerals. That's the main message today. One thing to be revised today is also the company's corporate social responsibility, because most of the time, the infrastructures and the things that the companies are doing for the communities do not reflect and do not answer the community's demands. It looks like companies are just doing this, for shedding light on what they want and without listening or hearing community demands. In Madagascar, for instance, our communities have been demanding for compensation and reparation for the loss and damages for a decade, more than a decade, but there is no just answer until now from Rio Tinto on that point. So please, let's just first repair what has been damaged before entering maybe into a new phase of this transition. We need to pause and reflect now. And I think that this COP27 can be a good momentum for doing so, for taking this reflection. And I will finish with one point. Governments also need to stop to harass human rights defenders and environmental defenders, because the right to speak and the right to disclose the truth is also a fundamental right. In my country, those who deliver stories from the communities get arrested. And this is not fair, because if you want development, this should be free for you. Have the government, you have the companies, but you have the people as well, and the people have the right to say what they are feeling, what they are suffering from. So, Silas, answering your question, I think that we really need to move from a materialistic point of view. The energy transition, it's not just a technical thing. It's not just a matter of minerals, even lithium or cobalt or whatever. Thinking of batteries, it goes beyond that. How do we input the human factor into this transition that we all want, maybe to a cleaner world? We are not refusing transition, but we say there is a better way for doing it, and governments are reminded are the first responsible for that. Then only comes the companies, and both of them have to look and listen to the communities. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much for those useful and really insightful highlights that's happening. And if I pick you of the very many comments that you made, which I think I think the point you mentioned about there must be a better way of managing the transition. The transition is the global imperative. It's going to happen, but it should be happen in a way that doesn't affect, the livelihood, doesn't affect the rights of the people. So it has to be managed and managed well. If I hear what you're saying, and for sure, putting people and the communities first is really key, and that is the theme of our discussion today. Now, I promised that we should have more interactive session, and therefore you have heard from the panelists, sharing the experiences and insights from the community and making some recommendations. I would recommend that we pick like 2-3 questions we have from the floor. It doesn't have to be a question, it could be a contribution from the floor, but let us try to be short and clear, because I think we don't have a luxury of time. So let us try to be short and sharp on our questions, then we can actually take more question. I can see already there is a hand already behind. I don't know whether we have a microphone or you can just speak.
Can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. We have 2 questions from our online listeners. The first is from Whit. He asks, the problems associated with energy transition minerals are getting better now. But at a meeting like the climate COP, they still don't seem to be heard. What more can we do to get your message out to the world? That's one question. And we have another from Olivia asking, are you seeing the same level of inconsequential behavior on the part of all companies? In my research, I see evidence that Chinese and Russian companies make a lot more use of corruption, leave a lot more environmental damage in their wake, and do not attempt to contribute to global development in communities. Whereas her research is saying that OECD-related companies seem to perform relatively better, knowing that there's so much room for improvement. So what's your assessment?
Thank you. I want to respond to those questions. I think the first question was really, how can we amplify these voices, the community voices, to the global platforms?
There is if you
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
I like a sentence that I heard on the question about the use of these transition minerals, lithium, etc. This green economy seems to be improving, but for whom? Right? I don't know. I would like to invite you and the audience, and also especially the policymakers, the corporations, to visit our communities. To visit communities where those lithium mining or nickel or all these so-called green minerals are being mined, and see what's going on. Drink our water, eat our food, spend some days there. And then check the health of the animals, not only people, because indigenous people are defending rights not only to the people, but also rights of nature. The democracy that compromises the life of other species. What kind of democracy is that? What kind of economy is that? And then before we say that we're improving in one area, we have to ask the lives of the vulnerable, the minorities, and the other species are improving or not? Because we have to stop thinking about improving because it's more profitable. Improving because we see more electric cars in the streets. What kind of improvement is that? Then I think we have to start there. Where is the problem? Where are the species and the communities that need protection? It's my contribution to the answer.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, if I would like to answer the question, how to increase the voices and the awareness about the problems related to communities and transition minerals. I think that most of communities cannot have access to like the international background or stakeholders, unfortunately, because it is costly to travel, because they don't have the contacts, they don't know who to reach out to. And I think there is a strong partnership to be built between civil society organizations and community at the local level, but also at the regional level, to get together to this kind of big events where we can ring the bell and say, look, people, decision-making people from around the world, there is a burning question that we need to look at, and it is this transition, as we say, to be explained, and the transition minerals to be improved in terms of governance and communities' rights. We have to create this kind of nexus, and I think that it can be improved if we all have the will to do so. But we need first of all to increase the knowledge among our own communities, because most of the time communities don't even have access to information. They don't know that some of these minerals are harmful to their health, and the governments once again are failing to explain that to their people, so they are killing their own people. So that is just my take on that.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Perhaps a suggestion might be then that we create a people's COP, because this COP is the government and the industry, and they're using our language now. Just and equity, just transition. From multi-corporations, what does that mean? So perhaps as we move in the future, that we have a side event that is called the People's COP, where we have engaged communities, we have engaged the officials, but we are in control. Because without community engagement and a community awareness, our people are still kind of, out of the loop. And it's the activists and the leaders and everybody who come to the conference and they say so cool and they take good pictures and they go home with nice documents and everything and wait until the next COP so they can go. So maybe we should have like regional COPs where we are emulating their format, but our speakers are like you. And the community, the audience is like us, because we have to do a process where you don't have to have a badge to get in, and you have to have this and that and so forth, and your grandmama got to be sanctified and carry on. You know, because otherwise we're going to come back next year. We're going to listen to you again. And so we ourselves have to set up the indicator for us. And we have to mobilize our people to be engaged. And it takes time, but we can do it. And we ought, secondly, if we don't do that, then we have to ensure that people like ourselves is inside of the official COP process with a blue badge, a green badge, red, yellow, and whatever color, all of them. So we can be present and make these kinds of presentations that they need to get to challenge the government and those big corporations.
Thank you, people's COP. Thank you very much. You have any question or intervention? I think that was more of
You said
whatever
suggestion, so
whatever say it. Do you have any other question or intervention?
That's the period for it to speak.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
All right. I'll come to you, Mom.
Yo creo que para mostrar estas realidades, como yo decía, hay que organizar como sociedad civil. Nosotros, como pueblos indígenas, tenemos mucho poder, pero unidos. La unión hace la fuerza, ¿no? Entonces, creo que de partido hay que hacerlo uniéndonos para mostrar esto al mundo. Y también, como dijo acá, hay que educarnos entre nosotros, informarnos entre nosotros. Y soy una gran creyente que la educación es una gran fuente de fuerza para las personas.
So to be able to tell our stories, it's important that we first organize. And we also have to be informed. We have to inform our own communities and educate ourselves to be able to tell our stories. I think that's very powerful. Education is powerful.
Thank you very much for engaging our communities to the awareness of communities. Point. Madam, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to add to what my sister Hati had shared and to what the sister from Madagascar had shared. In my community, there was an elderly woman who was interested in climate change and wanted to sign up for solar energy. She was told that she would be able to sign up for solar energy for free and that she would not have an electric bill. She went to sign up, found out after she signed up that her bill was higher. So it made her very leery of the system and how it works for Black people in the United States. So these are the stories, when we talk about stories, that we need to share with each other globally so that we can put them together and see how we can work together in solidarity. So I want to offer as well that we consider thinking about strategizing and coming up with action items on how we can work in solidarity globally. We have to connect, almost like the apartheid movement in South Africa. If it wasn't for solidarity, we wouldn't have won. But there was a huge global solidarity that made that movement win. So we need to do that again with these issues that we're talking about. So I offer that as well to the conversation.
Can I just share some words on her? You know, we had in Brazil a very colonized, historically, state that his main goal for decades was to divide indigenous people, traditional communities, and Black communities. You know this story, right? And then for many years, we saw this debate, this fight. Why we are fighting each other? Because of the narrative that the state
Right.
Sodas for cheap, for we say banana price, right? But now we are doing that. We are really rewriting this narrative of solidarity among us. Our fight is stronger and our voice is louder because of our partners. Thank you.
Let me add one thing. In the United States, we have this mantra that we sing. And that's another piece that's powerful for us is our culture, our art, our tradition. And we say, we are the children of the people who could fly. We are the children of the ones who didn't die. We are the children of the people who could fly. We're fearless, we're strong, we're ready to carry on. We're fearless, we're strong, we're ready to carry on. So we will win, we can do it. We can do it. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much. We will wait. Thank you very much. We will wait. Now, I think for the interest of time, unless we have a question online, no. Thank you very much. For the interest of time, I would now wish to ask my panelists, to react overall, but also to give a final word of as we wind up. We have only 4 minutes. Let me now start from my immediate right.
Okay. I think that this conversation has been inspiring to all of us. And this conversation has to go beyond this room. So our mission from here is to spread the word about this need for our community to get organized. We have the mission to inform as well our communities about the dangers of mismanagement of transition minerals and tell them what we have to do, what we can do together as a world, as a united global community to, give also inspiration to our governments. Maybe they need some inspiration. That inspiration can come from people. So let's give them inspiration also to companies and remind them that it is a human story first before being a technical story. That's the message.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to be short and I spoke too much, but there is no, I will make my own, the Galina Angarova, our cultural survival director, executive director. She says, healthy and sustainable economies should mirror healthy ecological systems. Healthy ecosystems are interconnected and resilient to change. They are interdependent and regenerate each other rather than depleting or weakening the system. What that means that we have the power to regenerate this system that is depleting our land, our communities, our people. Then I think a big message I can learn from my brothers and sisters here that we have to inspire, to educate our states, our communities, to educate even the corporation, not to be afraid before the money power. We are not afraid of this power. We go there to educate them because they fail to protect people. They fail to comply with human rights. Then, therefore, they need to be educated.
Thank you.
Giving hope to the people to believe again that despite the challenges they sit down, they open their eyes in the morning, that it can be done. For those that have got political power, to work towards fighting poverty. Well, it is real. That's the reason they are choosing one from us or a few from us, and they dangle money or some, some short-term incentive. But also to make democracy work for the people. And sometimes for us who are in extractives, we are not active in governance, mainstream governance. We are just focusing on natural resource governance. But it's the same people that go to vote for political leaders that are disadvantaged. So being able to start seeing the nexus between our work and general governance and mobilize people to really open up is one of the things that can work for us going forward. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Leslie.
Yo como reflexión final quiero decir que los derechos de los pueblos indígenas y de las personas deben estar al centro de todo tipo de soluciones.
So the rights of indigenous peoples and people in general should be at the center of all decision making.
No podemos seguir basando soluciones de la naturaleza cuando no han sido estas las respuestas.
We cannot be talking about nature-based solutions when this isn't the answer.
Y por último, nuestras vidas como pueblos indígenas no son objeto de cambio para su solución.
And our lives are not, should not be at play for their solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are just on the hour, and here comes but I think in summary, what we're hearing is that for the just and equitable outcome of energy transition, we need to get the process right. And we need to ensure continuous and sincere consultation with communities, respecting their rights. And we believe if it is done well, then the energy transition will benefit the people, will benefit the world, and we will be able to transition to a better world as we go along. Those are the kind of closing remarks, without forgetting that we have pledged for a community COP. And I think it would be very important to think about how do we take that forward so it doesn't end up within this room. With those few remarks, please join me in thanking our distinguished panelists. And also a big round of applause to you participants for contributing, very exciting. And definitely for our colleagues who join me online, let us also give them a round of applause. Thank you, and have a wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful stay here, and